right. I have a very special guest today, an expert on entertainment law today, a professional. Mr. Edsel M Brown Jr. Esquire is here. How are you doing today?
Fantastic.
I'm glad. I'm glad. So before we get into, explaining what's entertainment law and all the things that we need to know from a legal standpoint, of course, general. So everything will be specific to you. So if you have questions, go seek out your own attorney. But we want to get some information about you. Can you introduce yourself and kind of explain your law firm, where it's located, and things like that?
Okay. My name is Edsel Brown Jr. As Lee's indicated, I'm the principal of the law office of Edsel M Brown Jr. I'm a little bit about myself. I'm originally from New Jersey, Jersey, but I've lived in the DMV for about 30 years. So I'm a DMV person these days. In terms of my background, I've got degrees. I have a BA, an MA, and a law degree. I'm also an accredited small business consultant. I've worked as a manager at the U.S. Small Business Administration for a number of years. I've been the chair of economic development for the Maryland NAACP. And for over 20 years, I've been the principal of the law firm that I announced in the beginning of the program. And in terms of my law firm, we're based in Washington, D.C. We're located at 1629 K Street, half block away from Black Lives Matter Plaza.
Okay.
And we specialize in business law, entertainment law, and government contracting.
Awesome, awesome. So you were very expensive. You qualified, very, very qualified. So I want to go into explaining what entertainment law is, because I don't know if everybody quite understands that when you say you're specialized in entertainment law.
Okay, well, in actuality, entertainment law is amalgamation of several different areas. So when you hear entertainment law, it combines contracts and media and other areas of law practice. So when you hear somebody say entertainment law, it's not just one particular thing. And it also includes both litigation and transactional activities. And it covers not only the talents of the person that's performing, but also producers, et cetera, that are producing the matter that's being used. So it's quite broad.
Okay, that's good to know, because we usually would think about entertainment as the people but in front of the camera or in front of the microphone, and not necessarily the people in the background.
Right, and if I may, what we also have to realize is that the complexity of entertainment law and how hard it is to conquer several different or master the subject matter of entertainment law, because you have TV, theater, fashion, digital aspects, film, music. So you see where we're going. And then once you get into each area, you can delve down even further. So that's why I want to emphasize it's quite broad.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense, because I would imagine like dealing with the radio side would be different from dealing with television. So that makes a lot of sense. Now, podcasting is newer. Talk radio's been around since forever, but podcasting itself is new. And when you have podcasters jumping into it, you have people that are inexperienced with entertainment in general, let alone the legalities behind it. So can you explain to podcasters who are just people like, me, or just getting into this, that we need to know how to protect ourselves against being legally liable for something that we may do or may not do?
Well, I'm going to lead a fairly general, broad discussion because, again, we have a very limited time, and I want to make sure I hit some very key elements that I think everybody should understand, regardless of what the subject matter in your podcast is. There are three essential areas that everyone needs to really focus on in terms of protecting themselves legally. First of all, there's copyrights. Second, there's right to privacy. And third, there's trademarks. Need to say, just like you're doing your podcast here today, there are certain things that are universal in all podcasts. You have some kind of introduction, you have guests on the show, and you may have some pictures or some music associated with the program. And those all sound like fairly basic type things that there shouldn't be any big deal. But trust me, there are legal ramifications, every step of the way. And you have to really make sure that you cover your posterior because it can be sizzled up pretty quickly. So one of the things I want to point out is, a lot of people, maybe doing a podcast at what they perceive to be a hobby. But,
Hmm.
once you get on here and start putting information and images and voices, art, etc., on this media outlet, you're exposing yourself to potential legal liability. And at the outset, as I said, even if you don't think you're in business, essentially you are. And if you're just doing it yourself, you basically have a sole proprietorship. You may not know it, but you have a sole proprietorship, and it's still a business, and it's subject to unlimited legal liability. So somehow you infringe on somebody's copyright, or you have some other type of legality that you infringe upon, you can be held liable personally. And in theory, someone or some entity could go after everything that you own, and the only thing that you have to cover is, like I said, your rear end. So one of the things, and I know we've chatted a little bit on the front end of this, that I want to point out to everyone. Even if you're just doing this part time, just really know what you're getting into, and as you progress in it somewhat, I would consider setting up some type of a business entity. And the one I would recommend, again, this is in general, every situation could be different, and depending on how many people are involved in the matter, is an LLC, because at least with an LLC, it has fairly simple organizational and corporate requirements that you have to meet each year, but it frees you somewhat from unlimited legal liability. So if someone were to sue your LLC, they could go after the assets of the LLC, but not you personally. And I'll kind of leave it there because I know you probably have some other questions. I don't want to get on the roll.
Okay. No, that makes a lot of sense as far as protecting yourself, because I think a lot of people don't understand either. So if you bring someone on your platform and they say yes to you, it is a possibility that even still they could tell you later that I want you to take it down. Should we also be, going after release forms and getting the permission in writing before we are releasing this information or this content into the world?
Without question. That's sage advice. Um, Everyone that has a podcast should be using some type of release form. I know that I'll give the moderator of this program an A+ because she's got an electronic one, which is great. It's very useful and accomplishes the purpose. But you can use, a printed off one. But the important thing is that you get your guests to sign off on that paperwork because, again, at the very beginning, I talked about the three areas: copyright, right to privacy, and trademarks. Well, this is the right to privacy. And you want to make
Okay.
sure that this person is basically freeing up that right that they have for you to use their image, et cetera. And they're acknowledging that they're going to be on the program as opposed to coming back later and say, hey, I didn't say I could do that. Yeah,
Oh, okay. That makes a lot of sense because they would have the right to say, "Hey, if they do it and like I don't like it," they would have
right,
the right to pull it
right,
if
right,
you don't have a release form.
right.
Now, what about insurance? So let's say you get into podcasting and you get into some trouble. Is it good to have insurance? Is there a such thing as pod insurance or insurance specific to podcasting?
Yes. There are really two types of insurance, and I'll talk about each one of them very briefly. Most professions have what they call professional errors and omission coverage. And what it does is protects you from legal liability from the major areas of your profession. And if you're a podcaster, as I indicated earlier, you're dealing with intellectual property type things. And what could happen is, again, here's some other sage advice. You need to make sure that you either use your own material or
Okay.
you get permission to use any material that's used on your podcast.
Okay.
And again, if you get permission, that speaks for itself. If you use your own, that's another thing. Um, and there are certain areas that you don't have to get permission, but I don't want to delve down too deep in those. But obviously, original content is fine. You get permission, and you don't need permission if it's in the public domain, works owned by the U.S. government, or what is called fair use. And we can talk about that, a little bit further in our program.
Okay, yeah, because that's coming up. Because I have questions about that too. So there's a lot of copyright pitfalls. You kind of hit on it just a bit. We use music in some of us podcasters will use music in like the underlay of the show, and then
Mhm.
or snippets. There are certain things online that they're called like online soundboards, where they take
Mhm.
snippets off of like social media or from certain movies. Would Is that protected? Is that under, that protection?
I'm going to tell you what I recommend without at least first, retaining an attorney to make sure that, you're doing what you should be doing, because I don't want to make a broad statement because it's not going to cover everybody.
Okay.
But there are currently available sites that have already cleared up pictures, music, etc. And either they're free or you can pay a fee up front and you don't have to worry about it. So, I mean, you may have to do a little bit of research to get what you want, but the key is having peace of mind that, you can be chilling out one day on a Friday night, relaxing with some friends at the club, and you come home and Saturday morning you got some mail coming, somebody's bringing an action against you. So, yeah, you better cover your rear end. But
Yeah,
again,
that'll
that
definitely
covers,
mess up your
yeah,
weekend.
that'll cover it. But you were talking about the insurance, correct?
Yes, yes. So what types of insurances should we have?
Yeah, as I indicated, the first one is the errors in the mission. Yeah, I just want to lose that thought. The errors
Okay.
in the mission. And again, the key is it's going to give you peace of mind because it's going to protect you against, trademark infringement, copyright infringement. But I want to point out defamation, libel, and slander, depending on the language in your coverage. But that's basically what the general ones cover. And the price can vary. So you'd have to go to, and what I would encourage folks to do is there are varying trade associations for journalists and podcasters, etc. I would encourage, and perhaps you can, give one off the top of your head, but they all tend to have professional ethics, and you'll get more of a discount on insurance and other things because it's a group. It's a group.
Hmm.
Um, but again, that's the errors in omission insurance. The other one is general liability insurance. Now, everybody is just about on virtual. You're not doing
Okay.
things in the actual studio. But let's just
Hmm.
say you have interaction with clients or guests, and it's kind of frequent. I would encourage you and your listeners to at least consider general liability insurance. And that's more for physical liability. Somebody trips over a wire coming in, or something like that, and that can be as cheap as $300 or $400 a year. But again, you have to determine if it's worth it for you, depending on how much you physically interact with folks. But if you do it a lot, things can happen, and $300 or $400 isn't much to ask, as opposed to possibly having to spend thousands.
That is very true. That is very true. Because when I think of general liability, I do think of you trip and fall, and then
Right.
you have that type of insurance. Now, I want to ask you. We kind of hit on it a little bit about fair use and what exactly does that mean. So as far as fair, because I see people put that on there on YouTube. You'll say this is under the fair use rule or doctrine, or however they word it. What is fair use, and are they
I'm gonna,
protected?
I'm going to give you a general response. And fair use is use of a copyrighted work done for a limited and transformative purpose. So, for
Okay.
instance, if you're going to use it as a basis to make comments, criticize, or parody the work, or something like that. But the key with fair use is it's very gray. You know what I mean?
Okay.
It can be a
Okay.
thin line between, oh yeah, that's okay, that was fair use, and no, that wasn't fair use. So I would encourage folks to try to stay as far away from the gray area as possible if you can.
Okay.
But
That
again,
makes
if you, right. But if I may, the other thing is if you're going to get into that area where you have a parody, or you're going to be using a picture, copyrighted picture or something for a basis to describe, etc., just think it through before you do it. Just don't have the person come on there, and then after the fact, you go, man, well, wait a minute, maybe we should have, you know. I know most folks are going to plan everything through, but most of the time it's planning in terms of the guest and what the presentation is going to be, as opposed to potential legalities and the impact it can have after the fact.
That is very true. We don't think about that until after it's done. And it's like, oh, I used this photo and
Mm-hmm.
I didn't ask if I can use this photo.
I'm going to tell you, I had mentioned to you again in passing that my daughter has a little program, and she had done a program, and she had all this things that I'm telling you about that she shouldn't have had in there. And then when I saw it, I was going, "Oh my God!"
Yeah, she has in-house
Yeah.
counsel. Now, are you also, does this also protect you? Like, let's say, or would you be liable rather, a podcaster or YouTuber or whomever, the rhetoric and the information you give out? So a lot of us have a platform now. Everybody is an expert in everything. Even if you're not, you're an expert. And we give out information and our guests come on and give out information. Are we liable for that as well?
Potentially,
Okay.
potentially, but what I would encourage is to have a disclaimer. I mean, you see a lot of these show. This the opinions expressed do not. The company
I
doesn't
have one.
necessarily. Right. Okay. You know what I'm saying then. But even having said that, let's be honest. Um, Even though potentially you may not be held liable, if
Mhm.
somebody may still bring an action against you. So if somebody, let's put it this way, I'm a guest on your show now, and let's just say I say some outrageous things that you didn't anticipate, even within the framework of the topics that you wanted to explore,
Mhm.
and someone out there gets riled up, or that person says something about some company or something, and that company wants to sue that person for what they said. Well, I guarantee you that person may have said it, but that company or that person who's bringing the action is going to sue everybody in sight. And guess
Oh
who's going to
wow.
be in sight?
Oh
Which, which,
man.
which brings us to the liability. I mean, the coverage I'm talking about. Because if you have the errors in omission coverage, provided that you didn't do anything intentionally, um, you're going to have coverage. You're going to have coverage to defend the suit, etc. Whereas if not, you have to dig in your pockets for the
Okay.
whole thing. Yeah.
And does that also cover you, like, let's say you have kind of like going away from the audio well, I guess you can stay on the audio portion as well. Content that's very similar to someone else. So, like, if they say you took this from me, would that also protect you, or is that a different level of insurance?
It would all it could, and that's why I'm trying not to make a broad statement, because what you really need to do is when you retain an insurance carrier
Hmm.
to provide you with the coverage. And like I said, I think it's great to try to approach a trade association. Like I'm a member of the DC Bar Association, right? And they're always, and you're probably a member of some large
Yeah,
trade organization,
the
right? And
National Black Association
right,
of Journalists.
right. And I guarantee you, I'm willing to bet you're going to be able to get some types of coverage through them. You see what
Okay.
I'm saying? If you
Hmm.
contact the national office and tell them what you need is, there's probably a carrier that's providing insurance for the group. And then when, some of it's going to be boilerplate, but you're probably going to be able to fine tune what you need with that boilerplate with the company.
Okay. That perfect, perfect. And if people wanted to, like, they're in the DC area, or do you also cover Maryland as well? Maryland and DC and Virginia?
I'm global. I'm based
Okay.
in DC, but I've got clients all over the place. Yeah.
Oh, okay. So if they wanted to be a potential client or maybe have a consultation with you, all they have to do is go on your website. Can you give that to us one more time?
Yeah, my website is Edsel, it's my name, Edsel M Brown Jr. Law.com.
Awesome, awesome, awesome. And we have a couple of seconds left, but I just wanted to ask you, is there anything that you would want people who are getting into this world to know that we didn't cover?
Um, I guess we've kind of focused on the legal side of things, and as I said, the major focus is the three areas that I outlined: copyright, right, publicity, and trademark. The other thing I would say is to close the loop, rather than just listening to what I'm saying or doing some you know minor research on it. I would encourage everyone to at least take a peep on the copyright, the U.S. copyright site, and the trademark site. I mean, I'm not expecting anybody to drill totally down, but at least know the nature of what you're dealing with, because a lot of times, we all rely on our professionals to do everything, and and everybody should at least be in the ballpark. You don't have to be a master of it, but be in the ballpark. Yeah.
Yes, because ignorance, what I've been told, is not a level
Yeah.
of defense.
Yes. And,
Like,
and
I
and
didn't
again,
know.
it's a business. And if you don't think it's a business, it's a business. And act accordingly with your business, whether it's just you or you have a formal legal entity.
And I appreciate that. And you heard it here. It is a business, whether you know it's a business or not. So I appreciate you coming. You are so great. You've given such great information, and I appreciate you coming to the platform today.
And I appreciate the opportunity. You have a great